Now I'd like to introduce Vivienne Barker. She was born in England and moved to Toronto in 1975. She spent many years as a library technician at Bishop's Strahan School. Did I say that right? Sorry. In Toronto, I should know that. And later as the owner and operator of Four on the Floor Pet Sitters in Newmarket. Vivienne retired to Bob Cajun, where at 66 she penned a semi-autobiographical novel, The Train Now Leaving. She is currently working on a novel about a widow who follows her dreams. Everybody, The Girl in the Park.
My parents didn't understand me. Most of us say that. I put them to the test. But now, Mum, I'm here, straight-laced, tax-paying, very normal. You'll be proud, I hope. This is just a reflection of my feelings as I've aged. It's fictional, but it reflects me. Her daughter kept telling her she really shouldn't be walking through Hyde Park at dusk. Too dangerous, she said. But Violet had been walking the paths, and even through the densely wooded area, for over 40 years now, and she always felt safe and at peace. Besides, she had Maggie, her Springer Spaniel, and Maggie would never let any harm come to her. Maggie was the last of a long line of Maggies. Ever since Violet and her husband Paul had brought their first pup together, they'd had Springers, every one of them called Maggie. Now Paul was gone, and she wasn't sure she'd have another Maggie. It was getting less appealing to get up at the crack of dawn to take the whining dog out. Slippery paths could lead to a fall. Dog food and vet bills were eating heavily into her pension, which didn't seem to rise at the same rate as everything else. Still, this Maggie had a few years left, hopefully not more than Violet. Well, that would be another issue. She put those depressing thoughts aside. It was a glorious autumn evening, with she and Maggie ready to enjoy their walk. Heading across the busy Toronto streets, still clogged with commuters rushing to get home, Vi and Maggie were relieved to enter the peace of the park via the wrought iron gates. Strangely, the gates were not attached to any walls, fence or railing, just free-standing amongst the bushes and shrubs that formed a boundary hedge. Violet remembered when there had been a railing, but it had been taken down during the war when every scrap of metal was needed for ships and planes. Funny they'd left the gates, but they were magnificent and a worthy entrance to a world that shut out the noise and the fumes of the 21st century. Once inside, Violet let Maggie off her leash, and the dog bounded into the undergrowth, following with delight the various scents that appealed to her. Now it was autumn, a beautiful time of year to be in the park, but the leaves were falling quickly, and it was getting dark earlier. Even at 6 o'clock the sun was going down. Vi followed Maggie slowly these days, but she wasn't worried. A sharp, short whistle would bring her immediately to her side. Very few people took the time these days to enjoy silence. Those that did come along the paths usually had a phone glued to their ear, or looking down, texting something that must be terribly important to risk a fall along the rutted path. Vi didn't understand the young's fascination with constant communication. Wasn't it wonderful to be alone with one's thoughts, listening to the scurrying of tiny animals, rustling the falling leaves, and the melodious music of the songbirds? Today it seemed she was alone, just as she liked it, when she heard Maggie barking from somewhere within the undergrowth. Vi whistled sharply, but Maggie didn't return. She whistled again, but the dog didn't come rushing up, panting, knowing she should have returned immediately. Another bark, and Vi was pushing her way through the tangled brush, briars catching her hair, scratching her face. Maggie must be in trouble, she thought, as she pushed harder through the branches, snaring her clothes and making her stumble over the fallen logs. Breaking through into a clearing, she found Maggie nosing at a bundle of what she thought were rags on the ground. Chastising the dog and ordering her to leave the rubbish alone, she came upon not rags, but a young woman curled up with her eyes open. Vi's hand went to her mouth. Had she found a dead body? Gathering her wits about her, she knelt with difficulty and put her hand to the girl's mouth. Thank God she was breathing, but totally unresponsive to Vi's prodding and Maggie's nosing. Fumbling in her pocket, she found that dreaded cell phone that she hated so much. And once she flipped it open and pressed the on button, she was relieved that at least the battery wasn't dead. Carefully pressing 911, she waited to hear from the operator. After what seemed an eternity, a voice asked her, "What's your emergency? And what service do you require?" Being asked for her location caused a moment of panic. Vi had completely lost her bearings in her frantic dash to get Maggie. The operator told her to remain calm and leave her phone on. The police would trace the call and would soon be with her. Taking off her coat, she covered the girl, who was clad in just a flimsy cotton dress. She still didn't speak, but did take hold of Vi's hand and held tight. Vi sat down beside her and waited. She heard sirens coming closer and closer, and soon a number of police were crashing through the undergrowth, with EMT personnel carrying all manner of equipment close behind. Upon examination, it appeared the girl's only injury was a broken ankle and a bump on her head. So putting her on a gurney with care, they carried her off to the waiting ambulance. Someone gently helped Vi to stand, as she'd grown stiff from sitting on the cold ground. Maggie had been at Vi's side throughout the wait and had to be put back on her leash as she was making low, growling noises to protect Maggie from the attention now directed at her. Vi and Maggie were led away to the path where the police cars were parked. A policewoman asked her if she needed to go to the hospital, as it had been quite a shock and an ordeal. But Vi replied that she was fine, but would appreciate a lift home, as she wasn't sure her legs were steady enough at present. Once home, Vi realised how exhausted she was, and seated in her comfortable old armchair with Maggie warming her feet, she nodded off. Enough excitement for one day.